On October 7, 2023, Hamas launched a devastating multi-frontal assault on air, land, and sea, inflicting tremendous damage to Israel's infrastructure and causing hundreds of civilian fatalities and casualties. To date, this was the largest infiltration by Hamas forces despite the advanced surveillance technologies of the Israel Defense Force. In fact, news reports of the failure of Israel's intelligence to pick up this imminent attack shocked most from the intelligence community, given the supposed extensiveness of planning required to pull off such a daring operation into Israel. Yet this was not the first time Israel had suffered from such onslaught after its independence. In recent history, Israel's inability to prepare for a conflict, which became known as the Yom Kippur War in 1973, was also a result of its lacking intelligence to preempt itself. Now, to understand how big of a failure this is, we need to get into the specifics of how intelligence agencies work and how their work is useful in times of high diplomatic and military tensions. The purpose of intelligence agencies is to detect possible threats arising from adversaries and predict possibilities for attacks to one's country. In Israel, Mossad is its premier intelligence agency tasked with gathering information, deploying agents to conduct espionage, and has a reputation for being the best for computer network operations, like clandestine entry into adversary phones and computer systems. Their capabilities are so good and so sneaky that they have caused more than a little controversy. Typically, for most countries with advanced surveillance networks, intelligence agencies tap into various modes of information collection, including, but not restricted to, human and signin, otherwise known as human intelligence and signal intelligence respectively. Furthermore, for each of these intelligence, collectors will develop multiple streams of access, so if one is discovered or shut down, others are still reporting. Yet, the attack on October 7 demonstrated Israel's world-class intelligence agencies failing to put a stop to Hamas' plans in carrying out its assault on the Israelis. Analysts believed that tens, if not hundreds, of Hamas militants were involved in the combination air, land, sea, and rocket assault, suggesting that the circle of knowledge was extensive. The intelligence community probably knew plotting was ongoing, but the warning was too general to result in decisive preventive action or improved defenses. Furthermore, it is highly likely the country's intelligence agencies were focused sufficiently on understanding this continuous change. In other words, when an actor's behavior makes a sudden break with the past. This probably gave rise to the case of non-specific warning. Reports indicated that US and Israeli intelligence were watching for rising tensions, but there was no precise warning of an impending attack. The New York Times reported that Israeli intelligence issued a warning to the border guards immediately before the attack, flagging a surge in activity, but those warnings went unheeded for unclear reasons. Policymakers often expect precision. An attack by this entity will occur at this place at this time. Unfortunately, the ambiguity of this attack or when this will take place delayed any specific measures to be implemented overall, and the military being unable to respond quickly enough and prevent escalation of damages. Another likely issue could be the intelligence officials placing an overemphasis on understanding them, which is enemies, but neglect understanding us, the Israelis, and how what happens in our agency's own country can change enemy perceptions and behavior. Israeli intelligence agencies, for example, might not have known whether or not their country's unprecedented domestic political crisis was perceived by its enemies, including Hamas, and the crisis may also help Hamas' attack succeed. Charitably, it is possible that Israeli services had few to no human sources. Gaza is a closed society, and Hamas oversees most things. Someone spying for Israel would risk both death and the safety of their entire family. It is possible that human sources were either not reporting or have been discovered. Yet, often neglected in intelligence post-mortems is the role of the target itself. Failure results not just from internal flaws, it can also be induced by an adversary adept at denial and deception, and willing to use previously hard-to-imagine tactics. To conceal an attack of this scale and complexity and achieve complete tactical surprise amidst ample warning indicates a dramatic increase in Hamas' intelligence and security capabilities in recent years. Particularly valuable to Hamas has been Hezbollah's expertise in intelligence, counterintelligence, operational security, and deception. It seems likely that key aspects of Hamas attacks on Israel were shaped in that Beirut operation room under Hezbollah's tutelage. The failure of Israeli intelligence to anticipate the attack is comparable to the start of the Yom Kippur War of 1973, when Egypt and Syria launched simultaneous surprise offensives on Judaism's most important holiday. In testimony before the commission investigating the intelligence failure leading up to the Yom Kippur War, an Israeli intelligence officer acknowledged that the military made its mistaken assessment that war in 1973 was implausible based on what was happening in Cairo, based, in other words, on cutting-edge surveillance technology that allowed it to eavesdrop on high-level discussions, rather than on glaringly obvious signs of an Egyptian military build-up near the Suez Canal. The Israelis had overly depended on Ashraf Marwan, who was Anwar Sadat's presidential secretary and Nasser's own son-in-law, who was paid $24 million for his information. Among other intelligence, Marwan gave his handlers a piece of information that seemed so important that Israel's military planners coined a Hebrew term to describe it, the conceptia, or the concept. This conceptia said that Egypt would not go to war until it acquired advanced swivel fighter jets that could contend with the Israeli Air Force. Sadat had made a deal with Moscow to acquire swivel jets, but these were not due for delivery to Egypt until 1974, and since it took at least a year to train pilots to fly them, the Israelis figured that they were safe for months to come. Yet, the state's top officials felt the superiority of their intelligence gathering had put a failsafe behind the possibility that Marwan was mistaken. The chief of the Israeli military's intelligence arm said that Israel's spying capacity was my insurance to tell me if there is a mistake in the conceptia. There are remarkable similarities between the dynamics that led to the Yom Kippur War and today. Hamas employed a tactic like Egypt's by ramping up distracting training exercises, repeatedly moving fighters along the Israeli-Gaza border and retreating over the past several months. Hamas' raid shows two things. One is that large-scale infiltration remains possible, even in the face of some of the world's most advanced surveillance technology, especially if an attacker is diligent and a defender is complacent. That is a lesson for countries that face reckless foes along long land borders, the Baltic states or South Korea, for instance. The other is that Hamas remains a dangerous hybrid actor, neither an old-fashioned terrorist group nor a conventional army, but like Hezbollah, a highly capable armed force that blends elements of both. Ultimately, intelligence still has an essential role to play, but many of its shortcomings can be avoided by learning the mistakes incurred by Israel's intelligence service in the ongoing struggle between Israel and Palestine.